It's now my sincere pleasure to turn it over to our two facilitators for this afternoon. Please, everyone, join me in welcoming ChelseaDee Harrison. Welcome, Chelsea.
And hello.
Yes, welcoming Janet Onyenucheya. Welcome, Janet.
Hi, everyone.
All right, I'm going to spotlight you both, and the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? You can give me a thumbs up. For those who are on camera, thank you. All right. Welcome. Janet and I will introduce ourselves a little more formally in just a moment, but we do have a welcoming ritual that we do at the top of all of our workshops that we're going to walk you through right now. We're going to begin with our access check. Kinsey, if you don't mind bringing up that access check slide for us to walk through. Yay, here we are. This is us celebrating the creation. Okay, all right. And we're into the access check. All right, so first things first, bio breaks are offered to you in between activities and whenever you need it. There's a little toilet icon there just to remind you, take care of your body. You always have permission to do that. The next thing is just for everyone's ability to be able to hear clearly, we're going to invite you to keep your mics off unless you would like to come on mic and verbalize something. The third thing is your cameras can be on or off, whatever you like, however you need it. The fourth thing is captions. Kinsey walked us through how to navigate to your toolbar, pull those captions up if you need them. And if you need any help with that, reach out to Kinsey directly and that will be sorted. The fifth thing is we're going to give you visual and auditory cues, checking in so that we know if you're understanding us, if you can hear us. And I'm going to give a description of myself momentarily. And then the final thing of our access check, when we're thinking about accessibility, we're thinking about what do we need to be able to show up as our most present self in the room that we're in. So if there's anything that you need us to be aware of or anything else you want to add to this access check, I'm inviting you to drop it into the chat now. And that's a standing invitation for the rest of this workshop. If there's anything you need in terms of accessibility, in terms of maybe you just need to let us know, hey, there's some sounds in the background, that's fine. We're here to be as present as possible and we want to support y'all in that. So if there's anything that you need added to this access checklist, I will give a second for you to drop it in the chat. Access is power. If you feel that you can tap into things and get resources, that is power. So we want to be empowering. All right, I'm going to move us along. You're welcome to drop anything in the chat if you need to, though. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Janet to walk us through a check-in.
Hello, everyone. I'm actually super excited. I see 65 participants on this call, and that just like warms my heart. I think this is the biggest audience we've had so far. I'm very excited. And one thing that Chelsea and I like to use to kind of gauge the emotional temperature of everyone in the virtual space is what we call our color-coded check-in. Green is used to identify yourself as someone who is 100% here, fully engaged, sharing ideas, responding in real time in the chat, on and off the camera. Sorry, camera can be on or off, and your mic is on or off, and you're fully engaged. Blue we use to sort of signify an emotional temperature that's somewhere in the middle. You're focusing on what's happening and you're responding in the chat. Sometimes you may be on camera, sometimes you may be off for an extended period of time, and so on and so forth. And we use yellow to identify participants that are maybe not sure how they want to participate today. It's on the lower side of the emotional spectrum, but you are still here and fully engaged, and you're just taking care of yourself personally as you are also actively engaging in the workshop. So I already see some participants populating the chat with their color. Oh, I see a blue diamond by Alexandra Lopez. Nice. That are populating the chat with their emotional color-coded check-in. And I want to give folks maybe a moment or two to let us know, because we can also adjust as facilitators based on what we're seeing popping up for most of our participants. It is a hazy day in New York City, so I know that can affect some folks. I would definitely say I'm feeling very green today. And while that's happening, just for the sake of time, I'm going to pass the baton over to Chelsea for our next slide.
All right, thank you. Thank you to everyone who submitted your check-in on how you want to participate today. There's no judgment around your color choice. We just want to know where you are. So thanks for sharing that. We're going to move into the agenda. I'm going to be sure to read these slides. Sorry, there's background city noise. Oh, New York. Okay, I'm going to walk us through this agenda. So we started with our welcome and our check-in. This agenda is just to let you know what to expect during our time together. We're going to move into our introductions momentarily. The next thing we're going to do is define the terms. What does all this words, culturally inclusive, responsive, what is this? So we're going to start to unpack some of that. We're going to do a deep dive into Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings' definitions and ideas and philosophies around these concepts. We're going to do a deep dive into Zaretta Hammond's ideas and philosophies around these concepts. We'll reflect on those. We built in a bio break, but also know that you have bio break open to you whenever you need it. At number 8, we're going to create some cultural origin stories. Number 9, if we have time, we're going to do a deep dive into some of Keith Haring's work. Number 10, we'll create cultural avatars. Number 11, we'll reflect and celebrate, because that's how Janet and I like to roll. And then we will close out at number 12. That is our agenda for the time we have. We can scooch along to the next slide, Kinsey. Okay, wow, that's me. That's my face. I'm ChelseaDee Harrison. I'm a light-skinned, maybe we could say a vanilla cappuccino toned skin, curly hair. I have an asymmetrical 2-strand twist hairstyle happening. I'm wearing glasses and a blue t-shirt in front of a white wall with a clock behind me. I am a theater maker, so whatever it takes to make the show happen is what I do. I write, direct, produce, choreograph, costume design, curate, dramaturgy, whatever. I love it. I'm also a teaching artist. I work with a lot of different organizations, and I'm also an Artivist. I'm interested in how the arts can help communities improve their lives and empower them to do whatever it is that they feel they need to do. How can the arts be a part of making sure that happens? And then if you'd like, you can read into that, that bio there to get a sense of who I've worked with and where I've been, but I'm glad to be here with you all today. Sharing this information is something that really makes me happy, and getting to meet other practitioners and hear how y'all are thinking and working is a big inspiration to me. So very excited to be here. I will hand it over to you, Janet, to introduce yourself.
Thank you. I am standing in front of my window, so despite how I may appear on camera, I actually have very dark skin. I am wearing rose gold colored glasses. My hair is dark black. I'm wearing I have bangs, and my black hair is about shoulder length. I, similar to Chelsea, am a teaching artist in New York City. I have worked for a variety of organizations throughout the years. And I'm actually now venturing into a space where I use arts education and holistic wellness as part of my practice as a facilitator and educator. And doing this type of work is very intertwined with my goals of sharing wellness with folks and educating them at the same time. My bio is also very long. I think we will be sending slides to you all at the end of this workshop. So you're more than welcome to read more about me and past accomplishments when the slides go out. Till then, we shall move into the next slide. So you've gotten a brief introduction to Chelsea and myself. And now we would like to find out more about who is in the room. So you all have the chat feature. And what I would like you to do is introduce yourselves. Number one, you're going to write your name and your pronouns. I actually have to update my pronouns in my Zoom box here, but my pronouns are she, her, hers. Number two, you're going to identify the role you play in arts education. Some of us are arts facilitators. Some of us are administrators in arts organizations. Be sure to let us know what you do in art, what role you play in arts education. And number three, what brought you here and what drew you to this cohort? So we know Face-to-Face is offering many workshops over the next week or so. What made you decide to show up to this one? All right, so I'll give folks about a minute or two to introduce themselves in the chat. Breaking the fourth wall for a second. Chelsea, are we going to have any live introductions, or should we just take a look at what's happening in the chat and leave it at that?
We can follow the chat, but if there is maybe one person who would like to come on mic and maybe verbally introduce themselves, if you could raise your hand so we can find you. But if not, y'all can just, drop it in the chat. That's cool too.
Yeah. Oh, lots of activists in the room. Okay, and educators and administrators and seeing, okay. Really awesome. And as Chelsea mentioned, if there's anyone who would like to, oh, okay, I see a raised hand.
Okay.
Yes, Injury Baker. Oh, there we go.
Hi.
Hi.
I couldn't find my hand for a moment. I'm Injury Baker, pronouns are she, her, and I'm an education manager at Roundabout, working on the Theatrical Workforce Development Program. What brought me here was that I work with young people from New York City, and having a culturally responsive method and curriculum is really big for us as we're training young adults. And that's a group that is a little niche often in the arts education field.
Hello, Injiri. What a wonderful sight to see. Injiri, you're a big part of why I'm even here today. You were the one that was like, you should maybe apply to be a teaching artist at the New Victory. And I was like, what is that? Game changed. So thank you. Welcome, Injiri. Okay, how do we feel, Janet? I mean, everybody take a peek in the chat. There's some really awesome people in the room today. So, and all kinds of folks, activists, teaching artists, administrators. I mean, connect with each other. There's some resources in this space. So this is awesome. Okay, transparency, Janet, what shall we do? Shall we move along?
Yes, and folks, just in case you may feel that we're moving along too fast, be sure to just let us know in the chat and we can slow down a little bit. I think we're just trying to make sure that we cover as much base as possible within the short amount of time that we have you all here. So we will be moving along. If you need anything to slow down, let us know and we will do that for you.
Okay, so we're gonna actually do, we don't need this slide quite yet. We're going to do a reflection question through a live poll. So what I'm going to do is, oh, thank you, Kenzie. Kenzie has dropped into the chat a link. This is the moment where we get to play with some technology where, we get to see what each other is thinking in real time. So if you click that link, it will take you to a website where there's a question and there are 3 slots that you can submit 3 answers to. Once you submit those 3 answers, you press the submit button and it will upload it into a live poll that I will share on our screen. But if we could, Kenzie, briefly, just so that everyone can see the question, if we could pull up the slide, I think this is like slide 8 from the slideshow. Is that Jen?
Sorry, I took it out.
Oh, you took it out. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind. There isn't a slide that tells us this question, but the reflection question is, what does the word and/or phrase culturally inclusive and responsive classrooms mean to you? So what I'm going to do is, I am already seeing results come in. So I'm going to share my screen so that we can see these ideas. All right. One moment. All right. I'm going to share screen. Let me know if y'all can see that, if that's coming in. All right, cool. So the cool thing about Mentimeter is that what it's doing is making certain words larger the more often they are used by the group. So what we're doing right now is actually crowdsourcing a definition of culturally inclusive and responsive classrooms. That's a whopper of a phrase. That's a lot of words and concepts in one phrase right there. So as opposed to starting off with giving you a definition, Janet and I wanted to source what y'all think it is. I'm seeing some words like respectful, welcoming, diversity, inclusion. Those are some larger words that I'm seeing, but we're getting even more responses in. Let me double check the chat and seeing. Okay, Pamela has responded in the chat. Understanding bias and learning. Thank you. Flexibility. Thank you, Emily. SB is mentioning learning and unlearning. Yep, the cyclical process of that, for sure. Culturally inclusive and responsive classrooms. All right, so it looks like we've got a little less movement here. So this is what the room has offered. I'm seeing, I'll read aloud a few of the words that I'm seeing. Oh, whoa, and we're changing even. I just love this. I mean, it's just like, it's like a living document. We get to see what's coming into the room. And I encourage y'all to use Mentimeter because it's free and it's a great way to get a sense of what's happening in the room. But I'm going to read aloud what some folks are offering. What does this phrase mean to us? Student-centered, liberated learning, belonging, aware, open-minded, openness, forgiving, productive, anti-colonial. That's it. Accessibility. Windows, mirrors, doors. How interesting. How interesting. Abundance mindset. Okay, and we've got some responses in the chat as well. All right, so I'm gonna actually stop screen sharing. And unless there's somebody who, did I just hear somebody come on mic? Is there a, okay. I'm going to stop screen sharing because we're going to start to think about what other people have said about culturally inclusive and responsive classrooms. But I want to take a moment, if you all just take a moment, read in the chat and also in the screen share the kinds of words that we're offering to each other. This is an evolving definition. Okay. So I'm going to stop this share. Okay. I can also download this. Mentimeter allows you to download your polls and save them as PDFs. So they create these really beautiful documents, if you like. So I will be downloading that and I can share that with us as well. All right, thank you. Let's move into Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings' work. So a little bit about Dr. Gloria's work, or Dr. Gloria, who she is. Born in Philadelphia, she's educated in the Philadelphia public school system. She's an American pedagogical theorist and teacher educator. She is known for her work in the fields of culturally relevant pedagogy and critical race theory. Two different things, but just wanted to ping that. Her work, she wrote The Dream Keepers, Successful Teachers of African American Children, and is a significant text in the field of education. So that's a little bit of background on who this powerhouse is here. And she offers a definition. She offers something that we'd like for you to begin to unpack. So from her essay, But That's Just Good Teaching, The Case for Culturally Relevant Pedagogy, she says, Native American educator Cornell Pewawardi in 1993 asserts that one of the reasons Indian children, and I'm sure they're writing from a different perspective, so I want to flag the language of Indian children, but we're going to zoom out a little bit, asserts that one of the reasons Indian children experience difficulty in schools is that educators traditionally have attempted to insert culture into the education instead of inserting education into the culture. Kinsey, let me move along to the next slide. So you can respond in the chat or you can come on mic. What are some of your assumptions about culturally responsive teaching? And when you hear the word culture, what comes to mind? I'm going to drop these questions in the chat just to have a reminder. But if we could also go back to that quote of Dr. Gloria, So what does the word culture mean? And I'm going to grab those reflection questions for you. Okay, so we do have some responses coming in the chat that, from Robert, non-white or minority tends to be associated. When we talk about culture, we're talking about those people over there with that thing that they do, this othering. Thank you, Robert, for that language. Alexandra, white supremacy and Eurocentric culture, when we're thinking about culture, to be cultured, perhaps. That might be something that comes to mind. Okay, Alnisa is offering minority is what comes to mind, especially within the context of predominantly white institutions and experiences. Interesting. Okay. It's cultures. Kim Johnson's offering, culture to me means traditions and lifestyles of people from different places. Great. Thanks, Kim, for zooming out. What's that? Big picture of culture. Chris is offering music, language, art, traditions, food. Ah, yes, yes. Emily's offering what the culture of your home life and family looks like. Oh, Angela's got this offer. That culturally responsive teaching is separate or an add-on to typical teaching practice rather than something that is part of the foundation of teaching itself. Wow. Yes, people are mentioning Zahra and Dan are mentioning this concept of being a guest as an educator. Sometimes you are a guest in spaces. What are you learning about people and how they do things? Fantastic. I would like to offer a definition of culture. Someone in our cohort mentioned culture is the way we do things here. There can be a culture of how we tie our shoes in this classroom, or a culture of how we cook our food in this home. Yeah, how we do things. Okay, we're building this definition, y'all. We're building this definition. We're going to explore the next quote and the next thinker. But I encourage you all to look into the chat at what people are offering, because there's so much good, juicy insight that we're making some connections around, unpacking what this word culture means. Okay, pass it to you, Janet.
Thank you, Chelsea. And as we think collectively about the idea of celebrating the creation of culturally responsive practices in education spaces, I happen to kind of think of Zaretta Hammond as like one of the godmothers on this particular topic. She has written a book called Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain that I think should be a guidebook, Bible of sorts for educators that are in spaces with young people and, to be honest, all people alike. So to just give everyone a bit of an understanding of who Zaretta Hammond is, Zaretta Hammond is an accomplished educator, writer, and consultant who specializes in promoting culturally responsive teaching and learning. Her work focuses on helping teachers develop more effective teaching strategies that support the diverse needs of all students. She's widely recognized for her book, Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain, and I promise you, you will not be disappointed if you read that book as an arts educator, especially in New York City, where we have some of the most diverse student populace from anywhere in the country. So she's widely recognized for her book, Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain, which highlights how teachers can promote authentic engagement and academic rigor amongst culturally and linguistically diverse students. I tend to think of her as the pioneer of understanding pathways the brain uses to make connections and meaning of different concepts and themes, and tying that into how we bring culture into learning spaces. So the first quote from Zaretta Hammond is, I believe it's from her book. I have to double check. The quote is, "A systematic approach to culturally responsive teaching is the perfect catalyst to stimulate the brain's neuroplasticity so that it grows new brain cells that help students think in more sophisticated ways." I will read that one more time. "A systematic approach to culturally responsive teaching is the perfect catalyst to stimulate the brain's neuroplasticity so that it grows new brain cells that help students think in more sophisticated ways." So we were kind of refining our thoughts on what we think culture means in a learning and education space. And so as you look over this quote once again, I would like to ask a question of you all. Kinsey, if you can move to the next slide, we will see that question, which is, what is an example of what this might look like practically in the classroom? So I will also add that question into the chat. And Kinsey, you can move backwards to the previous slide, similar to what we did with Chelsea. And I'd like to have you look over that quote and answer the question. What is an example of what this might look like practically in the classroom? Stimulating the brain's neuroplasticity so that it grows new brain cells that help students think in more sophisticated ways. And I also encourage anyone who wants to raise their hand and speak aloud, you're more than welcome. I think we've only heard one voice so far, besides myself, Chelsea, and Kinsey introducing ourselves. So I'd love to hear the voices of folks in the room. Oh, Neil has raised their hand.
Yes, I was
Hi,
gonna.
Neil.
Hi, y'all.
Hello.
I've been involved in 2 different occasions.
Yeah.
And so, thank you both for this wonderful, wonderful workshop. I actually will share, and this is just in light with what the face-to-face has been. Yesterday, there was a session on hip hop education. And one of the ways that I think culturally responsive in this approach is, say, if you are in a school of diverse students, is helping them to reframe current social events in history through a hip hop lens in order to see it more than just a commodity or entertainment or something that's appropriated for monetary gain and attention and fame, but actually as a part of American history. And I think being able to help them understand that, and also using hip hop approaches as Purple, I forget their last name, but I know the first name was Purple, how they were framing different Thank you. I knew y'all would be on it. Purple Norris, how they framed the different, like, whether that's spoken word or using the body, and how those types of hip hop approaches could be brought into a classroom in order to stimulate new brain cells. So that's my answer. Thank you.
Thanks, Neil. And along the lines of what you said, I think it's really important to have a diverse toolbox, right? Some people may identify with hip hop cultures, others may not. And an entry point may be something that's more similar to the culture within which they identify. And having a variety of knowledge, I would say, is helpful as well.
I wanted to chime in about the idea of the use of current events. That's one of my back pocket situations. To ask the room that I'm in, what is it that's happening that you care about right now? What's a challenge that you're facing? What systems are keeping you from what you need? Or, asking the room, what do they care about, is a great way to get a sense of, like that check-in that we did at the top of this workshop. What's happening in the room? What do people care about? That's a great way to figure out, well, how do I connect this current event to maybe this subject matter or to what's happening in our season, because this is what the room cares about. So inviting the full humanity of the people who you're in the room with, through the use of current events. And also people get information from all sorts of places. And I love to learn about where they're sourcing information. Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to chime in on that.
I hope I'm saying your name right. It's Anupama. Sorry, not Anupama. Angela Pelletier said, a question that you could ask is, what is worth fighting for? Yeah. That'll get you very, very intimately connected to what students are passionate about in the particular moment of time, which you can use as an entry point to connect with them. Dan and Neil kind of have the same sentiments. Dan from Roundabout Theater Co. said, it may look like always ending and using examples from students' culture, rather than examples from my own. Truly, truly. Connecting to neurons that exist before trying to forge new ones. Yeah, I think sometimes it's hard to be mindful about connecting with folks on their level rather than our own, because it seems very natural to want to impart onto others. Whereas I think sometimes in terms of fostering connections that are deep and meaningful, you would have to understand the other person as well as yourself and meet somewhere in the middle. Let's see what else is happening in the chat. Students, oh, Lindsay, hi, Lindsay. And students interviewing or including family members or community members in their assignments to bring all of that knowledge into the classroom. Yeah, for sure. Finding, not ending, oops. All right. I am going to actually move on to Zaretta Hammond's next and final quote. No problem, Colin. Thank you very much for showing up for the time in which you could be here with us. All right, so Zaretta Hammond also wrote, I define culturally responsive teaching simply as an educator's ability to recognize students' cultural display of learning and meaning making and respond positively and constructively with teaching moves that use cultural knowledge as a scaffold to connect what the student knows to new concepts and content in order to promote effective information processing. That is a long sentence. All the while, the educator understands the importance of being in a relationship and having a social emotional connection to the student in order to create a safe space for learning. I will read that one more time. I define culturally responsive teaching simply as an educator's ability to recognize students' cultural display of learning and meaning making and respond positively and constructively with teaching moves that use cultural knowledge as a scaffold to connect what the student knows to new concepts and content in order to promote effective information processing. All the while, the educator understands the importance of being in a relationship and having a social emotional connection to the student in order to create a safe space for learning. So when we populated the Mentimeter poll earlier, we collectively created our definition of what we thought a culturally responsive learning space looks like, means, and feels like to students. Zaretta has given her definition of what a culturally responsive teacher, facilitator, educator does in the classroom with students. And actually, she kind of touched upon some of what we were discussing earlier. Neil saying using hip hop as an entry point into making a connection with students, because that is a culture within which they understand and could make more meaningful connections through. And so what I want to ask is that you read this quote one more time and just write in the chat if does Zaretta's definition of culturally responsive teaching connect with your own? If so, how? And if not, please elaborate. And once again, I would love to encourage folks to raise their hand and speak aloud. I think having a verbal dialogue adds an additional dynamic that's really exciting and invigorating in a virtual space. So just in case you forgot, you're reading the quote. Sorry, we defined what we thought a culturally responsive education space looks like and means. This is Zaretta's definition. Do you agree? Do you disagree? How and why? Irene says, totally resonates with me. Totally makes sense. Krista, starting from where they are, using that as a base to scaffold new concepts, skills, info, so on and so forth. Robert, I like the language that you use. It is a co-learning process. I've never thought of it in that way. Encouraging and engaging with the knowledge and cultural experiences and responses with everyone in the classroom. I like the idea of a co-learning process. Yeah. Teaching and facilitating practice need to be respectful of diverse cultures. Yeah, for sure, Neil. All right. So we're going to build upon. Oh wow! Now I see the chat populating at a more rapid pace. We're going to build upon the quotes that we read from Dr. Gloria Latson-Billings and Zaretta Hammond. And we're going to move into our next activity that kind of puts this idea and this theme and this concept into an artistic space. So if we can move on to the next slide. Yep. Chelsea, do you want to read the reflection? All right.
Right. So I also did just want to point us to, there is some fantastic stuff happening in the chat right now. I wanted to ping a question that Emily posed. Emily asked, I'm wondering more about what cultural displays of learning looks like. Lindsay responds, I believe Lindsay is responding to that I think that first step of recognizing students' cultural displays of learning and meaning making is so important. Often as educators, we focus on the teaching moves portion, but educating ourselves so we can do that recognition first is equally important. And then Alnisa mentions translation, thinking of it as translation. But those displays of learning, that's a very good question. That's a sensitivity that one has to develop to what's happening in the room. You know, is it just the latest, pop song that you're using, or is it how the students think of rhyming or fashion or what is trending in their social media sphere that you could be scaffolding off of? This is very interesting. Okay, sorry, I'm gonna move along. So reflection. We're gonna reflect on the themes and ideas that we came up with during this robust discussion. And we're going to create a symbol. And I think of this symbol also as maybe a doodle. If you don't consider yourself a visual artist, although everyone is, think of this as like a doodle, a little line drawing, a little shape drawing that expresses what you now understand culturally responsive teaching. That's what our CRT means. Not critical race theory, different things. But just want to ping that. Culturally responsive theater, what you now understand it to mean or represent. We want you to create a doodle. Okay, this doodle, it can be a heart shape, it can be wiggly lines, it could be a combination of lines or doodles. But just take a moment and think about all that we've discussed and create a symbol, a contained image that expresses what we've come up with, what you understand these things to mean now. You can do this on a piece of paper. I got a little notebook here and a pen beside me. You can go ham and get onto some like Adobe Canva situation and make a whole thing. I mean, we've seen people do all kinds of things. So take this where you want to take it, but you only have, how much time do we have, Janet? 2 minutes. Okay. So we've only got 2 minutes. But oh, Beth, that is so clever. You can dig into those emojis too. That's a really great way to use it. All right. So you got 2 minutes. Work on those doodles and symbols. Symbols that express, symbols that capture the idea. Oh my gosh, these are great. I'll give you all a second to populate the chat, and then we'll share in 2 minutes. Janet, you about to say something?
I was just going to say, Beth, I think you like sparked something I'd never thought of, which is using the emojis to represent an idea and a concept in an art making request. That's pretty cool.
I see Jamie and Kyla are like synced up. That's great. Can I, Emily, do you mind if I spotlight you? You've got like a life cycle of sorts happening. Okay, cool. I'm gonna spotlight.
I see student teacher. Oh, wow.
This is reminding me of that co-learning phrase. Emily, did you want to speak to a little bit about the shape you chose and why?
Sure. Sorry if you can hear my cat yelling in the background. I feel like having the social emotional learning piece doesn't just speak to I think empathy in one direction, being more empathetic as a teacher, but just the student being the teacher as well as the teacher being the student, and them feeding each other in both ways. That it's a two-way street, yeah. And the response, goes both ways and is a continual process or continuous. Yeah.
Thank you for your share, Emily. I think it actually connects very much with what Lulu wrote in the chat. Sun inside of a sun inside of a sun, radiating and sharing energy as a group, all feeding each other. So it's like a recycling of energy. Just goes round and round, feeding one another. Lucy, I'm downloading your JPEG so I can see. It did not pop up for me. Oh, I hope I'm still in the Zoom room. I'm not sure if I got kicked out of the Zoom room.
Oh, you're still here.
I'm still here.
You.
Oh, I can't see you all anymore. I clicked on the image and then something happened where I got taken out of the room. Well, at least the screen whereby I could see everyone. How do I see that? So I guess we were just going to use the last minute or so to share on screen for those of you who would like to share what you've physically drawn within your space. And then those of you who have populated the chat with your symbol, we can all kind of take a look at what's happening in there and discuss aloud if we see something that we'd like to comment on. And
yeah, we're almost at our official bio break time.
Got it. Okay.
So we could, I wanted to mention something about Chris Heller's symbols that they put in the chat. But yeah, after that, we could probably jump into a little bio break.
Yeah, I'd say let's,
And then,
sorry. Yeah, I was just going to say, I definitely, let's comment on Chris's symbols because they're very interesting.
yes.
And I'd like to know a little bit more about them, and then we can go into an official bio break.
Alrighty. But what stood out to me about Chris's symbols is that well, first I see a little remnant of the first symbol is reminding me of who shared Emily. I believe it was Emily's cyclical image that was happening. So I see that in Chris's first symbol, but all of these different directions we can go. It reminds me of Zaretta's language around teaching moves. You know, we can move from one place to another, connecting these different ideas. That's what these symbols really express to me. Thanks for sharing that, Chris. And Ruthie has offered an image descriptor in case you weren't able to download that JPEG. Really awesome, very simple image that I think is very evocative of this process. All righty. So what do you think, Janet? Time for a break?
Yeah. So we are going to give you all about 5 minutes to gather yourselves. In that time, if you can find something to write with or on, markers, color pencils, we encourage you to bring those into the space. And I think that should be it for the time being, because we're going to do an art making activity when we return after our 5-minute break. So please take care of yourselves, use the restroom, get some water, bring some materials back with you into the space, and we will reconvene at 5:03. I think that gives us 5 minutes to pause. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Chelsea, I did see that you put in the chat, Anupama, would you be willing to share with everyone when we return from break? Anupama, I think you had a visual that you drew digitally and wanted us to view.
Yeah. I just don't know how to do this camera thing. 1 second. Because I'm on an iPad, I don't want to put myself on it actually. Let me set it up with give me 1 second.
Okay, no problem.
Okay. All right. I think I'm blacked out sufficiently. Let's see. Okay.
Oh.
Ah.
Wow.
So this visual came to my mind like a lightning idea kind of thing, like with the lowercase I, but without that dot. And then the lines reaching out to everyone in the room. And also making it shine.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. And
thank you so much.
You were one of our cohort members, an OG cohort member.
Yes. I loved it. I loved that program. Thank you so much for doing this again. I wanted to come again.
Yeah. Thanks for coming again. That's
You're
amazing.
welcome.
Okay. So where shall we move now? Janet, shall we hop into the template?
Yes.
All right.
So what we're going to be doing individually now is creating a cultural origin story for ourselves. Some of the information can be aspirational. Some of the information can be non-fictional. I always get those two screwed up. Non-fictional means fact, right?
Yes, without fiction.
Hey, brain. Okay. Because I think as much as we talk about culture within the young people and folks that we are communing with in a learning space, we also come with our own culture as well, which is great to celebrate in a space and actually opens up ourselves to making meaningful connections with people in our everyday lives and in learning spaces. So this activity is kind of a way within which we can connect with ourselves again and think about ourselves as people and our own culture and how that informs our perspective of how we engage within the world. So, in completing your cultural origin story, the template is on screen right now. The first prompt is to write 3 sentences about your origin, perhaps starting with the story of your name and or where your family originated from. In my introduction, Kinsey mentioned my name is Janet Onyenucheya. Onyenucheya is of Nigerian descent. My family originates from West Africa. Deep history on the continent for myself. And as a first-generation American, there's so much for me to connect with others on just from that one trait that I possess. Number 2, then you're going to write 2 sentences about your personality and or events that happened that turned you into who you are. Wow. Most of us have had many events that have turned us into who we are. I would say just choose 2 that were the most impactful. Lastly, you're going to write 2 sentences about your motivation for what you want more than anything in the world and why it matters to you. That is a good one. I think as humans, we kind of connect on quite a few topics within which we are kind of united, but as individuals, I'm sure we are motivated by a plethora of things that are varied and also make us unique. And so I'd love to know more about that. And those 3 prompts will be necessary to create your cultural origin story. So we're going to task you with completing this in about 2 to 3 minutes. Chelsea, is there anything that I have missed in my instruction that you would like to add on before we start the clock?
You all can feel free to respond to these prompts with more doodles and more shapes if you like. The concept of critical fabulation that I learned from ChelseaDee Hartman. Sometimes we don't know where we come from, and we have to, as ChelseaDee taught me, we have to do a little bit of research and put 2 and 2 together and maybe form a story that we don't necessarily have all of the archival documentation for, but we can critically fabulate based on what we do know. And so what you do know about yourself, share that. And you can also, like Janet mentioned, it can be things that you wished for as well. So yes, that is where we are. 3 minutes to respond to this. Alnisa asked in the chat, are we going to share this in the chat or privately? We're actually going to do some breakout rooms where you'll get to share with 1 or 2 people before we meet again in a large group. So yeah, that's how we're going to do our sharing. If you'd like to share it in the chat, you're more than welcome to.
All righty then. So hopefully you all were able to finish your origin story template. If you weren't, wherever you stopped is perfectly fine as well. What we're going to do now is we are going to get into breakout rooms of about, I believe, like 2 to 3 participants. And Chelsea and I would love for you to either share your origin story template verbatim, or you can summarize what you wrote down. Each person is going to have a minute or so to share their origin story template. And the idea is to familiarize yourself with the cultures that exist within the virtual space that we are in right now, and to identify entryways in which you can connect with others through shared culture, perhaps, or shared perspective. Chelsea, is there anything that you would like to add to the instruction before we move into our breakout rooms?
Yeah, this is your chance to meet other folks in the community. We will be, only in these breakout rooms for a few minutes. If you'd like to share to the full group when we return, I'd take a moment and just think about that, whether or not you'd like to. But yeah, I think that's about it.
All right, welcome back, folks. I know that was fast, even for us who were just kind of like chatting in the main room. That was really, really quick. Hopefully folks were able to get their ideas out and in a complete manner in a minute or so. And so what I would like to ask the cohort is if there were any moments within your breakout groups that were particularly sparky, or a moment in which you would like to share with the group that had impact on you as either a listener or a speaker. And you can respond to that question in the chat or raise your hand. Ronnie, was that a raised hand? Okay, yes, Ronnie, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I like that everybody had different ways of expressing themselves. So I did all this writing, but then somebody else just narrated. And then as they were explaining, they were doing this with their hand. So I joined in, it became a dance. And then a third person just did a drawing representing themselves. So just learning, because we were discussing this, the different ways of expressing yourself, that it could come out differently.
Thank you, Ronnie. Yeah,
That sounds amazing.
I was going to touch on the person who had the different emojis that were like circular, arrow up, arrow down. There's like so many ways to connect with one another. That's interesting when you're able to see that in real time. Anyone else would like to share an impactful moment from their group, the breakout group? You can either raise your hand. I think I can see. Okay, Regina raised their hand.
I would like to be friends with all the people that I met. We come from very different worlds, and yet each person was so sensitive, and I'm just intrigued to know more about them. So I just wanted to share that. And I share with them that the blood and souls of all people scientifically are common in all of us. So we have those things in common. So that's it.
Thank you, Regina. I would also love to be friends with everyone who is in this virtual space with us. And I'm wondering if anyone has a cultural origin story that they would like to share with us as a group. I know you shared in your breakout rooms in a smaller, intimate manner. Is there anyone who would like to connect with? Oh, Emily, yes.
I feel a little greedy because my group listened to me also, and they were such great listeners. But it was the first time I got to actually talk about information that I've been gathering about my family, which felt great. let's see, I recently have been inquiring about my name. It's Cooper, but it's spelled Kuper. And I found out that my name comes from papers that my great-great-grandfather acquired from a dead Russian soldier when they were fleeing. They're Jewish, and they were fleeing Russia because of the Tsar. And they got to Ellis Island, and the Russian soldier's name was actually Cooper Vasa, and they just cut off the Vasa like they do at Ellis Island. They just changed names, and we were left with Cooper, and then moved to Hester Street in Chinatown to a tenement building, and used to gather needles from the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire that were left over and polish them up and resell them for a penny each. And so I thought that was really cool because I knew about the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory that happened, and to know that my family was there at that time and that's how they were living. And it's really cool. It feels like it's so small, but to have those gaps in memory filled in feels really, I don't know if it changes my day-to-day life, but it feels like it does.
Wow, thank you, Emily. So many of us can relate to the immigrant story. New York is such a diverse place that I think nowhere else in the world compares to the people that you meet when you're here. And wow, beautiful story. Okay, I have seen Pam all workshop long, and Pam has their hand raised. Chelsea, can you remind me of how we can take care of the stories and time?
Yes. So as we're listening to what Pam is going to offer, I'm going to drop a final reflection question into the chat. Going forward, what is the first thing you will consider when creating culturally responsive learning spaces? What's the first thing that's going to come to mind for you after this workshop that we've done? You can drop your response in the chat. I want to celebrate all of the work that you all have done, and take it away, Pam. Tell us about you. What's up?
Yeah, first of all, I love Kinsey and like these open forums. I am from Ohio, so I feel like I'm a voyeurism into the New York City culture, but I want to stay focused because of time. I want to read you my first sentence and then I'll say a little bit. I don't know, but I do. Met, but does that mean no? Chosen by adoption, I am from everywhere. And I think sometimes like we can even have a bias of that people actually have, like, you know what I'm saying? Like I was adopted and I met my biological families, but do I know them? Not really. And so like I love I choose to look at it with the lens of I'm from everywhere.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
And Chelsea, I think that's also why it's very important to introduce the idea of, it's called critical fabulation. Am I saying that correct?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, because to make an assumption that everyone knows their history through time or genetics is a great assumption to make that may not necessarily be true for everyone in the room. So thank you for reminding us of that, Pam. And for sharing the first line of your story. I would have loved to hear more. I see some other responses in the chat from folks that I think are responding to Pam and also responding on behalf of themselves. In our last minute, I think we would like to end with a ritual that we kind of established in our cohort last year. It was a little poem.
Yes.
Oh,
there it is.
There we go. Yes. Our ritual was to use the last 20 seconds to put your weekly wins in the chat. and to collectively read and appreciate everyone's win. And our mantra that we recited at the end of that was, a win is a win for us all, no matter how big or how small. So 30 seconds to put your weekly wins in the chat, or also maybe some takeaways that you had from this workshop, so that we can celebrate ourselves, celebrate the moment, and send ourselves into the next activity in an elevated light and space. Oh, Kinsey's wrote, launching face-to-face. Yeah, that's a big win. Wow. Huge undertaking. Kimberly, this is great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kimberly. We appreciate you offering the space for us to facilitate this evening. So thank you. Chris, connection and relationships are so important. Oh, I feel like more so now than ever, connection and relationships are of the utmost importance. Let's make sure we foster that before AI tries to also create an algorithm for
Oh, goodness.
for creating connection relationships. Finally getting to the gastroc. Oh, I love these wins.
These are wonderful wins. And the win is a win for us all, no matter how big or how small. Kinsey, was there any final announcements from the roundtable that needed to happen?
Yes. Just a final invitation to everyone. First of all, thank you, attendees, all for being here and making this such a beautiful space. But mostly, thank you so much to Chelsea and Janet for facilitating this workshop for us all, for bringing us all together in community to talk about all of this beautiful experience and knowledge that you're dropping on us and that is existing in this room collectively that has been shared. So wonderful. I'm so grateful to have you both here. Thank you as well to Stephanie and Maria, our ASL interpreters. And just a last invitation to join us for the last 2 virtual sessions of face-to-face. So we're taking a break for the end of this week. Happy holidays to you all for whichever holidays you're celebrating, because there are many happening right now. And we will have 2 more virtual sessions on Monday. That's April 10th. And I'm just putting the full schedule for face-to-face in the chat. But at 10 a.m. on Monday, April 10th, we have Black diaspora representation, intersectionality of history, culture, and religion. And then at 4 p.m., you can join us for our final virtual offering for face-to-face, which is gender inclusive practices in theater education. So we hope you can join us. Thank you all for being here today. The biggest thank you to Chelsea and Janet, and everyone have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
A win is a win for us all.
That's right.
No matter how big or how small.
Thanks all.
Thank you all.